New little, okay, awesome. Hey, everybody. Welcome to our live broadcast. We are live. I want to let you know how excited we are because here at Gussie's Gut, we're all about the dog microbiome, and we're excited to have this whole entire show about another way to help with your dog's microbiome. Something pretty cool and exciting, and it's fitting in the theme of both mine and my partner on species appropriate, biologically appropriate feeding and way of health. And speaking of my partner, please welcome Dr. Ian Billinghurst today.
Good morning, everybody. Well, or afternoon or evening, depending where you are. Good. And hello, Rob.
Hello. Well, we're very excited for today's show. I know you are too, with getting to talk about the gut and the wolf.
And so, with a person who absolutely knows some incredible stuff that we can all learn from.
Yes. Well, you queued her up perfectly. So our guest today is Julie from Adored Beast Apothecary. Welcome, Julie.
Hi. How are you?
Great.
Hi, Julie. Good to see you again.
Nice to see you too, as always.
Well, let's get right into this because it's kind of a mix of an announcement and an educational show that we're doing today, right? So I don't want to, bury the lead, and I don't want to make the announcement for you because you're here. So why don't we kick it off by you telling us why we're here today, specifically on this day?
Well, I think the main thing is because we've launched something that is completely unique to the market. My company's been in gut health for many, many years. That's a big background of mine at my vet hospital. So we have, do you want me to spill the beans now?
Let's spill it, because that'll help us launch let's spill it.
Awesome. So just working with gut health for a very, very long time, we are evolving as everything does. But the interesting thing about our evolution, I think, is that we're looking actually back to evolve. So basically what I'm saying is I believe that in health, whether you're looking at dogs or people or whatever, we have to look at our ancestors in order to see where we're going wrong so that we can move further, right? Like ahead with less chronic disease. So we came out with a species-oriented probiotic 5 years ago that was from a dog. And then we did a cat one and we've done a horse one. But the one we just launched now is actually from a wolf. So it's a group of wolves that are actually a very, very old colony or pack, and from Alberta, and that we've been following for a while. And the feces that we have isolated the probiotic and made the probiotics from is from that group of wolves.
Great. Okay, so this is a wolf strain probiotic, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Can I ask you a quick question there, Julie? Are these wild wolves or are they a colony of captive wolves that are kind of living in the wild?
No, they're wild. They're wild wolves.
So absolutely wild.
Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting. So this fits into what I think the three of us are in real good company, because we all believe and we have a lot of similarities and we have a lot of common ground. But the big thing I think that guides this conversation is that we look back to tens of thousands, even millions of years of ancestral feeding when we think about, not just the gut, but also feeding and the way our dogs are eating. So let's get into this a little bit more. So one of the things that I was struck in particular about was how you think about how wolves versus dogs eat and naturally, and how even the best raw fed domestic dogs today aren't fed the same way as wolves were and are. So can you go into a little bit of that?
Are you talking about dogs that are on raw fed diets as well as right? Okay.
Yeah,
So
let's just focus on the raw fed dogs and get people up to speed on that. Yeah.
well, there's a huge component from my perspective with gut health, and that whole, when you look at the gut as an environment instead of looking at the gut just as a gut. And when you look at that, there's so many things that affect the gut, and stress is a big one. Boredom is a big one. So there's a lot of different things that do affect the gut. So when you look at a wolf's diet, you're looking at, I would say the biggest thing is the diversity in which they eat. So not just eating beef every day, not just eating lamb every day, not just eating whatever every day. They're eating different things all the time. And because they're ingesting everything, like the brain, the eyeballs, the gut, the contents of the gut, they're getting, I would say, hundreds of different species of prebiotics, right? So they're getting different kinds of vegetation, they're getting different kinds of berries, they're getting different kinds of all different kinds of flora, right? So all different things. I don't think we could ever replicate that when it comes to dogs that are urbanized, right? Dogs that are living with us. We don't even do that. We can't even do that ourselves. Like, we can't even go out and eat the diverse amount of vegetables and meats and different things that our ancestors would have eaten. Or even, we look at tribes. I've followed and have done a lot of research with the research that went into the oldest living people, and they brought it right back down to the diversity of the gut, but not just the bacteria, but what the bacteria fed on, because what the bacteria feeds on is what gives the postbiotic effect. So what actually gives the health benefits to modulate the immune system or create the short chain fatty acids, those are the synergistic process of the bacteria and the prebiotics put together. So when we think about a wolf or something ancestral like that, it would be hard pressed to ever recreate that in a diet.
Yeah. And that you're speaking about the trifecta of health, the pro, pre, post. Yeah.
Yeah. So for I've been doing microbiology and research for a very, very long time. And I would say the last 5 years, I've really geared it up to looking at the types of prebiotics, the types of what happens with what bacteria and what prebiotic, and what is that postbiotic effect. Because at the end of the day, if we don't know that as a company and someone that is producing species-oriented pre and probiotics, I can't really say it's going to do this, because I don't know unless I research the postbiotic effects. I mean, I can sort of say generically what a probiotic does or generically what a prebiotic does, but I wanted to know what our prebiotics did. I wanted to know what combination of a wolf or a dog specific species did with which prebiotics, and what was the postbiotic effects from that.
Julia, sure. I've got a question. You research these wolves. How do you research what they actually eat?
It's just basically the ones that we used. It's mostly from
the food I'm talking about. How do you figure out what foods? Because you spoke of them eating berries and other vegetables and whatever, and gut contents.
Yeah, just basically from the topography.
So you're working it out from fecal samples?
Yes.
Is that right? I'm just interested in how you determine, because looking at people like Meck claim that the wolf in his wolf parks, which because they're very well fed, I suspect, never eat gut. I spoke to very early in my career. I had the great fortune of having a lady who worked for the Mounties, and she was both a graduate in veterinary science and medicine, and she did a lot of research on the wolves in northern Canada, I guess, in the wilds up there, where I learned that it was species appropriate for them to eat frozen food. And a lot of the animals that she would find that they did a lot of, for whatever reason, they opened a lot of wolf carcasses up and had a look at the stomach contents. And of course, I also looked at a lot of the studies that were done in foxes around the Canberra district in Australia. And it was from studies like these that I realized the importance of diversity and just understanding that these so-called carnivores ate a much wider variety of foods than most people would suspect. And when I wrote Give Your Dog a Bone and other writings, that has always been in the back of my mind. So I was just a little bit curious as to how you analyzed or got to understand what was these wolves were eating, because I know for sure there would be no wolf, as opposed to the Mounties where my client was working so long ago. You would not be sacrificing wolves to have a look at their stomach content. Not that they did that deliberately.
Yeah, no, predominantly just from watching them, seeing what what's left in the carcasses when they're after they've been eating it. What that species, meaning like what that rabbit might be eating, what that deer might be eating, what the moose might be eating, what that mouse might be eating, because in the wintertime they do actually eat a lot of mice. So even the diversity of what kind of animals they eat is huge. And then what does that mouse eat? Because you can bet your bottom dollar that when they eat that mouse, they're eating the entire content. They're just like chomp, swallow. And what is that mouse eating in the winter? Like pine needles, which has huge amount of antioxidants. What are they like? It's almost impossible to figure out exactly what they would be eating or what's in that feces. But what's not impossible to figure out is what the postbiotic effects are, which is what fascinates me probably the most of everything. It's like I remember when the first time we did the canine one, and we looked at it and we looked at how it contains or suppresses or mitigates the amount of pathogenic bacteria, and the bacteria that it does that with was E. coli, Salmonella, Clostridium, like all the ones that vets are scared of, that dogs are going to get and pass on to people. This probiotic literally, I don't know, it just literally naturally suppresses it. And that made so much sense to me. It's like, well, of course that probiotic's going to do that. Of course that bacteria is going to do that, or they wouldn't have evolved. Right?
It's really a matter of balance, isn't it? And it's a matter of organisms living together in harmony, which is really what it's about as well. But let me also make another point, Rob. I'm just jumping in here, but have you ever been asked by a veterinary faculty to teach the students about gut health?
I have. And you know what's so interesting? It was 6.5 years ago. 6.5 years ago, I was asked by PEI, Prince Edward Island in Canada, to go and talk about gut health. And I did my presentation, and this really, really smart young veterinarian asked me a question, and she said, my mom has been telling me about this for so long, and I subscribe to everything that you're saying. I find it so interesting. But can I ask you, Is it true we don't use species specific probiotics on our companion animals? And I was just kind of floored for a second. I said, yes, it's true. We don't. And she said, why? And I said, because nobody's done it. And I remember driving home. It's like a 4.5 hour drive. And I was driving home going, okay, there goes my roof of my house. There goes my tires on my truck, new tires on my truck. Because I was just like, this is what we have to do. Like, we have to really figure this out. We got to figure this piece out of how to do it so that we collect the research so that we're taken seriously, right? And trying to keep it as close to the authenticness of what we're trying to achieve. So it's that was once I was asked by that, but they're still doing it, Ian. They're doing a lot of gut health education, but one thing that really worries me is that they're sliding it into conventional medicine. They still have to conventionalize it somehow, and this is no slag. It's how universities work, right? Like, so.
But how are they sliding it into the food that all vets recommend? This carbohydrate-based, ultra-cooked, ultra lacking in genuine nutrition and protective. Are they sliding it into that slot?
Yeah, that's my point. It's crazy. Like, I watch television commercials and I see this beautiful dog running in the nature, and it's like, and begins with a P, and I won't say the whole word. It's a dog food with probiotics. So to me, it's like they're I call it greenwashing. Probiotics and gut health is such a I don't know, it's such a coined term now. Everyone's looking at it. I'm not going to say it's a fad. It's not a fad, but it's the thing now. It's what's industries are making.
I've got two more questions. I'm going to ask one now, another one later if we have time.
Okay.
The question is this: a lot of raw feeders out there will be listening and looking at this, and as they've known that I've always recommended vegetables pulverized to resemble gut contents.
Yeah.
Can you explain, or can you tell me your view on whether or how or if, or just address the question of vegetables as their fibers being prebiotics? Yeah. Does that in some way determine what probiotics are grown? So in other words, the prebiotics that we feed in terms of vegetables and other things, to what extent does that determine the makeup of the probiotics within the gut?
A lot. I remember when we came out with our first products, and I used I wouldn't use anything. I think I was telling you guys this before, but I wouldn't use your basic sugars, right, that we see in all the other probiotics on the market. So we used I really dug down and looked at what would animals be eating, what would the prey be eating that wolves and stuff would be eating. And one thing I found, like, yes, there's grasses, there's berries, there's vegetation that these prey guys would eat, but everybody that ate throughout the whole year would be tree bark. So I used larch as a prebiotic because I wanted to try and mimic that. But when you're thinking food, right, vegetables are a huge source of prebiotics. But what concerns me is that to get the amount of vegetables, even with the amount of probiotics that people are feeding now, it's a scary thought for me, because we're giving 30 billion colony forming units. Like, that's why when you look at our probiotics, not even the species oriented ones, I use a ton of prebiotic. There is a lot of prebiotic. There's no fillers or anything in our products, but I use a lot of prebiotics, because if you don't, you're going to wind up with leaky gut. If you're feeding a ton of probiotics even if it's kefir, even if it's yogurt, even if it's whatever, you're going to you have to be careful that then you're feeding enough prebiotic, or the native bacteria, which doesn't leave the gut, will start to ingest the gut lining and actually create leaky gut if your dog doesn't have leaky gut already. So to answer your questions, I've never ever thought, like, I've never been a component, like I've never been on the side of just feeding meat. I've always fed my animals. I've always recommended at my clinic lots of vegetables for their in their diet. So when the vegetables are fermenting in the gut, absolutely every single thing in nature has its component, has its buddy. Like when you talk about companion planting with plants, right? Things like that. Every single prebiotic that goes into that animal or person's gut will have a propensity, will have a ability to form a bacteria, or to feed a specific bacteria. Do you know what I'm saying? So the more diversity we can get into the gut, the more prebiotics, the more diversity we're going to get with bacteria, different natural bacteria. So
Great. That's
so
fantastic, Billy.
that's always been my philosophy. And that's why with this wolf strain, and that's why I won't just use sugar, because if you're just giving sugar in a prebiotic, in a probiotic as their prebiotic, they're getting the same prebiotic that's going to have the propensity to grow the same and feed the same bacteria.
And not only that, Julie, so people who feed a carbohydrate-based food are basically feeding a sugar probiotic. So they're getting this one food which isn't very appropriate for either the dog or the gut bacteria or gut organisms.
Yes.
Thank you so much for that answer, because a long ago when I was producing the diet for dogs, I said, look, I don't know why half of this stuff is working, but as long as we try and mimic the way our dogs evolved, if we do that, we will get the right job done, and we will find out later why it works. And we are finding out more and more, and you're contributing to that in this particular way, and so many other ways as well, of course. But so thank you, Rob. I'm going to hand back to you because I've been monopolizing this conversation.
This is great. I love to just sit back and learn, and I've heard a lot of really interesting things. So a couple things that particular that interested me. So Julie, you mentioned that dogs today could never have the same diet as wolves. Totally agree with that. And you mentioned some other reasons why that is. They're not able to, graze the way wolves are, et cetera. And also, we have over sterilized their environment. And we've also, just by living with them, we know that we can affect their biome. So our biome affects their biome. Yeah. So when you're sitting next to them, sleeping with them, whatever it is, these biomes there's so much, I think, that we can, all three of us, admit that we don't know about the biome. It's as massive, I think, we're going to find out as the cosmos itself.
That's in my thing.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's
okay. So I mean, we know a little bit to make us dangerous in space. We know a little bit to make us dangerous in the gut. And what the big companies have done is they've oversimplified something that's very complex. Yeah. And they have made us think that this one little pill, this one little powder, this one little chew is all we need for gut health. The truth is that diversity, dynamicism, and enzymatic life is really what, and all of that mixture, which is super complicated to sell, is all part of really good microbiome health, and rotating foods, rotating vegetables, all of that. So I really appreciate you saying that, because I think that's something that we need to keep saying over and over and over again. And then I will say on this last thing you and Ian just talked about, the amount of vegetables. I'd like to hear, just for the audience, how much of the meal you think should be vegetable, and then also from Ian, just to remind the audience if they've not read his book.
Yeah, well, I always go in front of the fire when it comes to stuff like that. My dogs never get less than 25%.
Okay.
Vegetables. And I try and also make sure, that's the other thing, is that we're dealing with Health Canada, we're dealing with FDA, right? So it's really hard to get. There are more whole food, like complete food diets coming out now, which is awesome, where they grind the entire animal. But there's still certain things that they don't want you to use. There's certain parts of the body that they don't want you to use. You have to remove certain things before you grind them. So I think that, for me, a large 25% is what I always do, but I always make sure that I can find. I'm lucky because I live on a farm, so I have access to all kinds of what people would think is gross and disgusting things. But because I'm such an animal advocate, I believe everything should be used. Like, I'm actually a vegetarian, but when it comes to a carnivore's diet, like, you have to try and make sure that they're eating everything, right? Every single solitary thing.
Yep.
So I don't know what Ian's, how much you recommend, like, and the other interesting thing is that when we say that, we're trying, like, for me, I try really hard not to overwhelm people, because if people are going out and purchasing their raw food, they're purchasing one that they trust and has a certain percentage in it or whatever. But then they're coming home, and for me, it's like, okay, if there's a vegetable that you're making at home that for sure is not in that food, just add it, or purchase a food, but then add different exciting new different things that aren't in that food. Like, and I think, something like you're producing would fill that gap, right? Like that's the wonderful thing about that, is that there is that gap. So yeah, I've been very lucky with my animals. So that's always been my thing. But I do, once Ian speaks, I want to go back to that galaxy thing, because I think it's really important.
Good. I could talk about that for a whole other hour. All right, great. All right, Ian, you're on. Vegetables, how much?
Well, I actually, in my summit recently, I did a, let me think. I did a.
Oh yeah, we can see it.
Yeah,
pyramid.
And so the bottom was raw meaty bones, because the dog is a scavenger, and so that the 80-10-10 thing probably applies to the cat as a whole food prey, but the dog is more of a scavenger. Then we had veg and offal at around about 15% each, so that we had about 60% raw meaty bones, and then veg and offal coming in at 15%. And then we had, the rest was poo substitutes, what I call poo substitutes, just to cover all the disgusting and revolting things, including soil, actual feces, and all the goodies that are actually in feces and everything else that dogs eat. So this was just to make it very simple. But I also gave them this. I took another thing, and rather than a pyramid, I drew basically a square, and divided it up and pointed out that it's variable. And it's variable on season, and it's variable on what's available, because they achieve a balance over time. And so at time, and very specifically, because I use vegetables in senior diets very much for lots of reasons, polyphenols, but very specifically because of their fiber content and its ability to produce healthy bowels, because of the short chain fatty acids are produced, all that sort of thing. And it assists the kidneys. Now, every dog in Western society, when it reaches middle age, has kidneys that are now not functioning nearly as well as they might. The early tests of BUN and creatinine and the very questionable test of SDMA, but I think that's what it's called.
SDMA.
Yeah. Well, the SDMA does give an earlier indication, but it could be indication of other things as well. But anyway, it doesn't really matter because they're all deteriorating in dogs that are being fed this way, so it doesn't really matter. So we increase the vegetables for a whole variety of reasons, both for their protective effects and also for their fiber effects and their fermenting ability. And of course, the bacteria, when they ferment, have to get their nitrogen to produce their own protein from somewhere. And guess what? They drag it out of the bowels, out of the bloodstream, and it bypasses the kidneys and it makes the perfect kidney diet. And all of these things are variable. Everybody wants to put a number on it, and there's no such thing as a number that works. Every dog is different, every diet is different, but you can measure things like BUN and creatinine because they're quite sensitive once the kidneys are wrecked to the extent of 65, 75%. So, and then you find the highest level of protein that you can put in to get just to keep the BUN and creatinine at the right level, and without going into great detail. So it's variable, and that's the question. Variable in amount, and of course, variable in what you feed. In season, local, and much variety as possible. And of course, most of the time you are relying on the happy bacteria and other organisms that are living on the vegetation that you haven't sprayed with any sort of pesticide, and it's so-called organic. Actually, organic is literally a carbon-based molecule, but that's another story. But organic in the sense that it hasn't been wrecked up by human interference. The only interference we've done is to put it through a blender to make it like the gut contents of an animal, except it hasn't been fermented, but we're going to let the gut do the fermenting. Did I stop there?
Yeah, it makes so much sense. That's why when I say, like, I tell people, if they're just going and buying the same frozen raw food all the time, that whatever's in season that they're eating, I just get them to add, and I'm a big bone chewer person, meaning like I love my animals to be eating bones, not just the percentage of bone in their food. So when I say 25%, I would like on top of that would be bones, right? So it's probably closer to where you are too when you do it like that. But it, like you said, it's diversity. If they can go to a local market and pick up some vegetables that haven't even been washed yet and haven't been sprayed, that's ideal. Sticking that through a food processor, right? So, it's just, it's hard to get. It's hard for a lot of people to find, things that haven't been sprayed or things that haven't been had glyphosate and things like that.
That's a problem. Yeah. So if you have to wash your vegetables, then again, that's a great time to add a probiotic mix of a wonderful sort as we're producing and as you're producing.
Yeah.
And fantastic. That's the way to go.
The nice thing though is that I think that when you were talking about the galaxy, my concern about just sort of, Ian, when you and I talk, it's really fun because, when I started off, I was the first licensed holistic clinic in Canada and, went through the whole thing of, when we talked about being fined by the Vet Association because I wrote an article on probiotics with dogs in 2001. And my concern is that I don't think we are going to know everything, right? I think we shoot ourselves in the foot by thinking that we can outsmart nature, that we're going to learn about nature, that we're going to understand
100%. 100%.
100%. And the more we try to stick nature in a box, the more we're shooting ourselves in the foot. We need to go out and go, okay, trees tell me what to do, ground tell me what to do. Like I want to learn from you. I don't want to take what you have and stick it in my Western box. And that's what we're doing. And don't get me wrong, because they're doing some really cool independent studies about certain bacteria helping with Alzheimer's and things like that. I'm not negating that great research, but overall, as preventative prevention for chronic disease and having our bodies thrive, or our dogs' bodies thrive, we have to throw our scientific ego to the side and go, we will never, ever know what nature does. And that's why, like my medicinal mushrooms, I won't use medicinal mushrooms that has been grown in a bag, grown in a, in a big auditorium, grown in a big factory, because, and people think I'm nuts, but because mushrooms are brilliant. They're brilliant. And there is no way that we are going to be able to replicate what nature is teaching those mushrooms. There is no way that we're going to be able to replicate the intelligence of what a tree is telling those mushrooms, or what the mushroom is ingesting and getting from that, what they just consumed. So I think that instead of going, okay, I'm going to take everything from medicinal mushrooms and I'm going to do this with them and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to make these 50 million acre buildings, and I'm going to grow mushrooms in it because it's a multi-trillion-dollar business right now. It's like, no, less is more. Like let's learn how to grow them with nature, and I can guarantee you won't have to use as much. Because what that mushroom holds from the wisdom of the bacteria from the soil, like our mushrooms, they're watered just with the water that comes from the forest, with tons of bacteria.
Julie, as you're talking, what you're talking about here, you were talking about true science, which is what you're talking about. You said have to throw scientific ego out the window. No, well, you do in a sense. You're talking about true science. The true science admits that we don't know everything, admits that we never will, and is prepared to always ask questions and always look and observe. And our scientists today are so bound up in their own techniques of double blinds, which you can never use with nutrition anyway, and focusing on one thing instead of looking at it as a cybernetic network of impossible complexity, which you have to, and not really attempting to understand it, but you simply understand that it is that, and that without employing that, you will never get the true benefits. And that's what we're talking about. So we have our veterinarians today, the way they're trained, they're not trained as scientists because they are not told to ask questions. They are told to follow technical formulae that are prescribed. So they are technicians. And for them ever to claim that they are scientists is 200% wrong. Anyway, I just thought I'd get on that particular bandwagon, having listened to you talk about that.
It's true. And then the other component of that is because I was raised in a very environmentally strict mama bear mother. So she protected the environment before it was cool. She taught us that we had to live in nature. If we're going to go out in nature, we're living in nature's house. If we had a bear come in our house, then we would hope that the bear would be able to respect our house. But when we're out in the woods, we're in the bear's house, and we don't get rid of things that we think are, shouldn't be there for our gain. And as a person that has a natural animal supplement company, I've been in the natural health sector for many, many years, like 32. And I feel like I feel guilty. Like I don't personally feel guilty because I'm as anal as I possibly can. But for people that are in this industry, I would say the majority of companies don't even think about that. They don't even think about, where are we getting this from? What are we doing to the animal in the wild? How are we, like, what are we doing? What are we actually doing to nature? Are we just taking and taking and taking? Well, take a look around. I mean, we are. So you would think by being in this sector and making our money in this sector, we'd all like get our ducks in a row to be like, we better be giving back a little bit, like we better be paying attention, because we're making a living on nature. And if we are just taking and taking and taking, like, to me, that's no better than pharmaceuticals. We're no better. We're not. I don't know. I'm going to go on this.
Julie, we are actually using it as a pharmaceutical. We're not using it in the way it should be. There's no question about that when that happens. Rob, can I ask Julie my other question?
Heck yeah.
I don't know how much time we got.
Real quick, let me do one thing first.
Yeah, that's fine. That's why I ask you. Please.
Hold your thought. I want to do one super quick thing, and then we're going to go to your question. So everybody, what we're going to do is, Julie's been nice enough to we're going to give away one of her new Roots Wolf strain probiotics to one of the live watchers now. So, well, pretty soon. So all you have to do to enter is just go to the comment section in YouTube and Facebook to enter to win. Just type #wolf in the comments, and then we'll be able, through the magic of technology, we're going to do a drawing that's live, and we'll do a random winner. All right. So just hit #wolf in the comments below, and that'll enter you to win a free probiotic, and we'll get that sent over to you. All right, Ian, over to you.
Okay. Julie, where are you?
1 second.
I know. There we go.
There we go. Julie, in our chat before we came live on air, you said that you had a clear vision of how to improve gut health. Can you share that clear vision with me, with Rob, and with the wider audience out there, please?
So I think it's an evolution. I think that when we think about, I mean, Ian, I know that you have been part of this for a very long time too, where there are all different levels of gut health. So, we see an 8-year-old dog that has had, so much gut trauma, so many NSAIDs, so many drugs, so many crappy food, so its gut is just falling apart. And the other thing that I often say to people is that by the time you see, they're like, oh, well, my dog, my dog doesn't have any problems with its gut health, with its gut health. And what I say to that is that by the time you see a symptom, whether that's a food allergy, a food reactivity, skin disease, an autoimmune disease, I mean, the list goes on and on, that means that there's been something brewing for a really long time. And the body has been trying to keep itself in homeostasis until the gut is so bad that you are seeing all of these symptoms that are coming as a cause of that. So when I look at gut health, I look at it as a path, as an evolution. And I feel like, for me, the more diversity and the more I can get through what I'm doing that can mimic, the end goal is to mimic what a gut would have looked like. I'm going to say even 200 years ago, because I grew up on a farm, not 200 years ago, but I grew up on a farm. And when I was a kid and our dogs were eating rabbits and groundhogs and mice and whatever, we had mostly collie crosses on our farm. Those dogs were living till they were 16 years old, right? Like, they weren't dying when they were 7. They weren't getting cancer when they were babies. They ate a species appropriate diet, along with other stuff that my grandma would make them. They never had processed food, ever had processed food. And I feel like that's my goal with probiotics. That's my goal with the research of probiotics, is not getting to clinically sciencey, but going back, like finding the prebiotics that will help to work like food, but be more powerful, so that it can help them faster, right? That we can get movement faster without causing, like I said, like a detoxification or whatever. So it's why I used the TurkeyTail as a prebiotic. So my goal, every single time I talk about species oriented food, always, right? So I don't believe that Adored Beast is the or the probiotics that I'm producing or formulating or creating, or the prebiotics even, is the be all and end all of everything. So it's like a species oriented diet, and then adding from a pre and probiotic perspective bacteria that they wouldn't be getting, especially urban dogs. Like my dogs eat more cow poop and horse poop and deer poop and rabbit poop than you could possibly imagine. So my dogs, I feel like, are very healthy from that perspective. But a dog that's living in a city, in the middle of New York, in the middle of urban, doesn't have that ability to find that feces, to find that stuff. So I'm trying to create different kinds of probiotics that will colonize and be able to give dogs that fingerprint of what they would have normally, the kinds of bacteria and the kinds of prebiotics that they would normally be getting a long time ago. So that's my goal, right? And if a dog is really, 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 really sick, you know, Rob, you did ask me about, like, well, what about the dog probiotic, and what about the species dog probiotic, and what about all the other probiotics that I have? I feel like there is no one thing for every dog. It's not just this blanketed statement. We see pictures come in, and I'm sure you guys do, of dogs with no hair, right? Like next step, that they're going to be euthanized because they've been on Atopica, they've been on Pred, they've been on the whole gamut, they've been on protein, like they're just becoming allergic to every protein every 3 months, like they're running out of proteins. So in that case, because animals are my life, I want to try and do two things. I want to support that person to see a fast enough difference so that when they go to their vet won't be able to say or do anything from a negative perspective. This is going to take too long. Your animal's suffering. You're being unkind to your animal. So I look at different ways of gut health in different stages of gut trauma. But the end result, so we may start off with something that's got like a formula that has like slippery elm and marshmallow root and DGL and things like that, so that we can try and create the healing of the gut. And I also have a product that helps to decrease scarring, because sometimes these poor guys that are really sick, we're talking really sick dogs here now, that are really sick, when that gut heals, it heals with so much scarring that they wind up sort of with similar things to IBD, because they still can't absorb their nutrients the way they should be. So we put homeopathic remedies into some kits that with something called thiocyanium in it, which is mustard seed. And mustard seed helps to break down scarring so that as the tight junctions are starting to heal, they don't heal with as much scarring. So for me, gut health ranges from the sickest animal that you could possibly imagine and moving it forward so that it doesn't cause harm, and the dog is feeling better. Its quality of life is better right from the get-go. They're not having, detox, they're not detoxing and stuff. To all the way to the end of being able to create, like I said, the fingerprint of things, more species, ancient ancestral bacteria and prebiotics to help prevent chronic disease. Because, but I also say, like stress, right? Like, I say to people, if you don't have any money, it costs you nothing to love your dog and take it out for a walk without your cell phone, right? To engage with your dog, to look at your dog, to pet your dog, to play with your dog. It all has effects on our gut and their gut.
Yeah.
Their levels, everything. So my vision is to align myself with people like you, educate people as much as I can about not falling into the trap of these commercialized pet foods having probiotics in them, not falling into that thing about, well, this specific strain is just for this and this specific strain. Like, we have to stop compartmentalizing natural health, because then it's not natural anymore.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Look, that's fantastic, Julie. I'm now going to ask Rob for his vision, because he came to me with a vision, and I think you two are very much aligned. So, Rob, can I hear your vision?
Oh, sure. I mean, I think that was beautifully said. So my vision is to, I've looked at the world in the supplement space, both human and dogs, and we've traded off health for convenience in a lot of cases. And when I started making this fermented product that we make for dogs, that I was just making it for Gus, for his own gut health and repair, I realized that we could make it convenient by just freeze drying it and making it the right way, but we wouldn't sacrifice anything. With freeze drying, we've frozen, a whole natural food. We've frozen it in time and preserved it beautifully, naturally. So I thought, wow, I can provide this conveniently to people and not have to sacrifice anything good about it. That was a great thing for us. And I'll just say, this isn't about us, this show, but Julie, so many things you've said are going to be resonating with me far after we hang up on this call. But and I want to follow up with you because it's been so inspiring for me. I mean, a couple of things you've said. We don't wash our products specifically. We only source from organic farms. We feel that's all additive, and we use prebiotics that are high quality, like artichoke, dandelion, and beets.
Yeah.
But all of these things have multiple purposes. We see each of these ingredients we have as functional foods that serve many masters. They work many different jobs.
Yeah.
And so where I think Gussie's gut is we're trying to we're not looking to be a therapeutic. I point people to your company and to other specific probiotics if they should ever, and vets, to look into those therapeutics and help these sick dogs. Where we want to be is a really convenient gut health and maintenance supplement that is in the same category as your vegetables, but ours are just optimized vegetables.
Yeah.
And so it's just great to be able to be on with you. And, you're doing such unique and special work in the gut space. And with this, you've got this, you've got a product that can work like some of the more traditional, really good probiotic companies, but you've got it from nature and from a natural, with a natural perspective, which I think is so super cool.
Yeah,
Well,
and I also,
Julie, can I just ask you this question in relation to that? I don't know what you're about to say, but I mean, really think we haven't asked you a very specific question, which is, how do you see this wolf strain in the spectrum of dog canine health? How do you see it being used?
Let's hold off really quick because that is a huge. I have like 10 questions I haven't been able to ask. I mean, seriously, let's do a quick drawing for free, and then we'll come to that question. Okay, Julie?
Sure. Yeah.
All right, cool. This is the first time I've ever done this, so bear with me, everybody. But we're going to do, if you've just put in hashtag, I saw a couple people commenting from the UK. I guess they're using a different, it's a different symbol for hashtag. Ours is the 4 strikes. So use the # hashtag, however you call it in the UK. I'm sorry for the confusion. Put that in the comments, and we're going to enter you in right now. Okay, this will just take 1 super quick second. Here we go. All right. Here we go. All right, everybody. You ready? So looks like we have 10 entries using # wolf. This is your last second to get in a comment for # wolf. Ready? Let's do the drawing here. Gussie's gut better not win. Ang Ross. All right. Ang, you've got the free. We'll get your information and we'll get you that free bottle. So congratulations. All right. Now back to the broadcast and the question here.
So what was do you want to repeat your question?
Yeah, sure.
That was our first time.
It was very good, Rob. I noticed I forgot to put my entry in, but it wouldn't have got to Australia anyway. Our customs people are too vigilant.
And it's saying something different to you.
Julie, I'm really just want to know how you see the wolf strain being used therapeutically, prophylactically. What's your vision for this wolf strain in canine health today?
I just think it's going to be able to add a specific bacteria that they're just not going to get anywhere else. They're not going to get that fingerprint, that sort of DNA from their ancestors in food. They're not going to be able to get it in any other probiotic on the market. So for me, my vision, my hope, my dream, whatever you want to call it, is that somehow we can implant that resilience. We can implant a bacteria that's coming from their ancestors that might just shift things, with chronic disease. If people are following other stuff, I'm not saying like, you're, vaccinating them every year and you're using all the flea and tick stuff and you're doing all of this stuff. It's going to, make all of the difference. But I think that the just introducing that fingerprint, right? Introducing that DNA, introducing that energy of what they came from, I'm really hoping it's going to make a big difference.
Have you introduced it to any dog at this point that either has well or been sick or?
Oh yeah. We've been using it.
Can you give me a quick overview of what you saw?
Yeah, I used it on one dog. I'm going to tell you this one first because I find I want to always talk about this one because we have people going, oh, is it going to make them aggressive like a wolf? Is it going to do this? Is it going to do that? Like, I know. But I used it on a dog that had allergies, but was also quite aggressive. It was quite a bit testy dog. And the first thing that changed was his emotional state. That's the first thing that changed. He was calmer. He had less separation anxiety. He had, it was really remarkable for me because I wasn't expecting that. I was so focused on his, on his itching and things like that I didn't really expect that to happen first. But it made sense for me because I think part of why he was itching is because he was so high stressed, because he was, his cortisol levels were probably through the roof. And I just thought it was fascinating. But we've used it for sort of chronic IBD. We've used it with you know, even dogs with arthritis that we've been trying. All other I'm not saying it's used for arthritis, but it had such a
No.
strong anti-inflammatory response. Like, this is what what's really cool is, through the studies that we did, like, we don't manipulate the studies. It's so fascinating to see what comes from it. And the immune modulation response in this is really strong. So when I stand back and I go, all these dogs that are on immune suppressive drugs, right? It's like, but this is half the dogs that we see. This is like 3/4 of the dogs that we see. And this bacteria actually has the ability to immune modulate. So, if
So
there
can
are,
you explain what you mean by immune modulation, Julie?
yes. So if the body starts to become overreactive, right? So when we look at Cushing's, or we're looking at any kind of autoimmune diseases, which we see so much in dogs, I honestly believe that torn cruciate ligaments are immune mediated. And I truly believe, I did a long time ago, I went and did a physical rehab program because my hospital had a full rehab center. And a lot of the surgeons were on the same page about, when they opened them up, they didn't look like acute injuries. There was a deconstruction, a breaking down of the tissue in general for a long period of time. And the fact that, every dog now is tearing their cruciate ligaments, and every dog, so many dogs, you do surgery on one, and what do they say? More than 60%, the next one blows. That's not injury anymore. That's some kind of chronic inflammatory disease process. So when we did the study with the strains, it showed that it had the ability to modulate, which means that if the immune system starts to get too high, it brings it down. If it starts to go too low, it brings it up.
So basically the word is normalizing.
Yes. Thank
Right.
you.
Yes.
Yeah, it helps homeostasis, helps to normalize, helps to balance the immune system. So if it's going viral or bacterial, it helps to bring it up. If it goes too high, it helps to an autoimmune disease, it helps to bring it down. And I think that's the other thing about how many people are getting into the pet supplement industry that don't have that understanding. And they're like, oh, it increases the immune system. It increases the immune system. It's like, we don't want the immune system increase. We don't want it. They're trying to actually bring it down. Right? It's that misunderstanding. It's that it's like, a lot of companies just jumping on the bandwagon when they've never had the experience of actually working with it, So when I saw that, I was super excited, because I thought, is it going to be able to help animals modulate that? Because I think there's a bacteria missing. I do. I feel like I know a lot of animals that haven't been vaccinated, that have been on raw food for a long period of time, and they're still getting autoimmune diseases. They're still getting cancers. They're still, like, there's something, and I feel like they're missing that genetic bacteria, that ancestral bacteria that helps to educate. Let's use that word. Helps to educate the gut. Helps to.
I have another very strongly related question to that, Julie. Have you looked at the feces of a dog that's had the wolf strain and seen whether it persists or whether it changes over time?
We have. We've done in vitro and in vivo and live studies. So we do know that one thing that we do know for sure, which is, again, a lot of probiotics, we don't know if it goes where it needs to go, right? Like, so if you're using lactobacillus, like, we know that they work. Don't get me wrong. I was using regular probiotics in my vet hospital and in formulations for a long time. We know they work. We see the changes. We see the differences. It's not, I never use less than 14 strains. First of all, I always use a ton of difference to try to get as much diversity as possible. But none of the probiotics that I purchased to make the products or that I used in my vet hospital, none of them did gastric viability, right? So we know that your gut is different than your dog's gut as far as the acidity goes. So we never really, no one ever did the research to know, does it stay viable in the, do these human probiotics or the probiotics that we're getting from companies that create probiotics, do we know that they even stay viable in the acidity rate of a dog's gut? Do they go and colonize in the large intestine, which is where they're supposed to go? So we did that study. So we did it.
I wasn't really worrying about the acidity of the stomach. I'm assuming you got that wolf strain in there, but I'm wondering whether that wolf strain persists or if it changes over time as bacteria do.
Yeah, what we did, the study that showed was that when the animals in the live study ingested it and when they defecated, it stayed viable. So it didn't die, it colonized, it was able to procreate. So we did that.
What I'm wondering, if this really is of benefit on a wider scale, it would be wonderful to get it, and possibly it may not stay within the synthetic food population, but it may remain within the raw-fed population. If they can then breed, this would be a wonderful thing to have as a stable bacterial species, if you will, within most animals today that are, say, raw-fed, because that would be the closest to the wild. And this would be a really important stabilizing influence on health over time, if it could become more common within the population of dogs that we know today.
Yeah, I think so. That's my goal. That's my hope. And that's why I used a different prebiotic so that it wasn't a modern prebiotic. So the prebiotic that we used is very, like we did the study with the TurkeyTail for a year. And we actually looked at the symbiotic relationship between the wolf strain and that prebiotic specifically, and what postbiotic effects it had with those two synergistic things, the wolf strain and the TurkeyTail as a prebiotic. So we actually followed it to see what the postbiotic effect was. And it I don't know. It's just, when you're talking about the cosmos, it's like magic for me when I see stuff like that, because I have this hypothesis. I have this thing that goes in my head that says, we got to go back. But when you actually see it happen and you go, holy man, like, look at what these two do together. This is incredible. It's exciting because it just reinforces, for me, it reinforces that I'm not crazy. And, for my business partner, it reinforces that I'm not crazy. And, but it reinforces my long-term goal, which is the way we're doing things right now. I'm really trying to, like our mushroom forest, our goal. So we've been doing it for 2 years now. Our goal is by the 4th year, we have a specific template that then we can go to woodlot owners and go, here's this template. Don't cut down your forest, right? Don't sell your forest for pulp and paper. Don't just sell your forest off. You can make as much money or more doing this. So we're not only supporting dogs, we're supporting, with TurkeyTail and with whatever, we're supporting their health, but we're supporting the environment in general. It's a much bigger project for me.
Julie, I have a lighthearted question. Let's see if we can grow this on truffles.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be cool? Uh-oh. My business partner's watching this. He's probably going to be like, oh no.
Well, that's great. I mean, Julie, I think another place we align is like we see ourselves being a conduit for, really good organic, regenerative, biodynamic farming, supporting that. And we think that regenerative farm,
Yes.
supporting regenerative farms is the key to, is probably the thing that we can do that we know will draw down carbon
Yep.
and will help with the greening of the environment. It's one of the things that I think it's 100% for sure. If we just created more regenerative farms, all that carbon would get sequestered, and it would be way more effective than some of the things that we're looking to do in the future, but we have no idea if we'll ever get there.
Yeah.
So, we're using our business to support those farmers. And I love to hear what you're doing with mushrooms, because we'll probably end up doing something very soon with mushrooms. And we believe in wild foraged mushrooms, farm grown and naturally grown. And so it's really good to hear about what you're doing there. I want to just ask a really basic question that's not been asked, which is your wolf strain, the Roots product, has 3 wolf strains in it. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Just tell us a little bit about how that's made. We still haven't really addressed that.
Okay. So the for all of the species-oriented probiotics we collect the feces. We decide, first of all, what we're going to do. We collect the feces, and then the bacteria is isolated. So let's say I'm going to even use Phytospora, the dog one. We isolated 11 and chose 3. And how we choose them is based on the criteria of immune modulation, its ability to suppress pathogenic bacteria, its ability to as an inflammation. So there's criteria that each bacteria has to meet in order for us to even think about moving forward with it. And then it is fermented. It's isolated. It's put into it's almost like a I want to say a centrifuge, but it's not a centrifuge. It is the oh my God, I can't remember the name of the machine.
Oh, that's okay. It'll come to you.
I just want brain dead. So they're isolated, and then they're fermented and they're grown. So that's how we get it from one stage to the next. But a lot of the process starts in the beginning isolation. It's a long process, because out of 11 strains, all those 11 strains get put through the grinder to see which strains are the most beneficial to the criteria that they have to meet.
Yep.
Great.
But it's it's really fascinating, and I mean I can't wait. The Roots line's going to have so many different kinds of probiotics and prebiotics that are very simple. So this line's going to be very simple formulas. It's going to be 1 species and 1 prebiotic, and the species is going to be ancestral. It's going to be unique. It'll be depending on where the animals are from too. I'm looking at all different places in the world. And then the prebiotics are going to be the same. They're going to be, we won't use a prebiotic that wouldn't match the probiotic, because to me that doesn't make sense. That wouldn't be naturally what that animal's eating, naturally what would be in that topography.
Great.
So I'm trying to keep it very simple, almost like what you were saying. Like it's almost like a food, but it's not a food. It's like sort of one step up, like a functional therapeutic product.
Great. Well, we've gone about 15 minutes over our usual time, which is great. It's fine. But I think we'll probably, let's end with one more question, Ian. So get yours ready. I'll ask this last question. So my last question. So do you think, Julie, that
Yeah.
wolves need probiotic supplementation? Wolves in the wild.
No,
Interesting.
no, I don't. I
Yeah.
feel like I was, when I was starting to do this, it's like, some wolves, they're 10 and 11 years old and they're still having puppies. And some of these wolves can weigh 185 pounds.
Yeah.
Right.
And they're living in these extreme conditions. Talk about stress.
And they're adaptable.
Yeah.
And resilient, and they're playful, and they just have this,
Yeah.
To me, unique, magical nature about them,
Yeah. Resilience is
I don't think that they do.
yeah. I saw Ian was laughing. He liked my question.
I think the only thing that wolves are missing is me living with them.
Tell me about it.
I would love that. I'm missing. The wolves aren't missing, but I'm missing.
All right. So Ian, what's your question?
It's really very broad and general, Julia. I just wonder when the veterinary profession is going to catch up with nutrition and all of this stuff, because it's the foundation.
No backups for 799 days.
Oh, go away. Sorry, that was my computer talking to me.
Telling you to back up.
Back up, yes. That's another story. But I am absolutely floored by the fact that this profession of ours that claims to be a healing profession or something recommends this awful food and has no vision of real food. And actually, I looked on a website of a company I can't name, I don't want to be sued, and it said one of the danger foods was raw meat. Yeah. And I just think, holy, if that's where our profession is at the moment, it's like the medical profession when they said that smoking was good for you.
Yeah.
How do we change this profession of ours? How do we do this, Julie? Do you have any idea?
You know what I think's happening right now, because I can get super depressed about it too, right? Like I sit and I just squirm when I see things, and I get really depressed, and I get really like, when is this going to change? But I think
you need a probiotic.
Yeah, I do. I get a specific.
I'm getting angry these days. I'm getting angry at it.
Yeah, so do I. But you know what I think's happening now, at least over here, is that I think it's supposedly since COVID, more people got dogs, more vets are having nervous breakdowns. I think the veterinary suicide is the highest of all professions in America. True. Yeah. And I think it's because, I think right now, what's going to happen is the wait time to see vets, and you're in and you're out, because they're all being bought by big, massive corporations. So It's going to get worse. It's getting worse. It's not getting better, because these corporations have one thing in mind, and
money.
And turning them into McDonald's, right? By, this is how much time you have. This is what you have to sell up. This is what you have to do. And I think that a lot of vets they're not stupid. And I think that they have, compassion exhaustion. And I think it's really going bad right now. So I think what's going to happen is that more of this, more information, like I'm writing a book right now about navigating your animal's life, like their health. Like, how do you work with a vet? How do you actually become the person that says yes and no and whatever? And I think what's going to happen right now is that people aren't going to be able to get into vets, and their dogs are going to get really sick, or their cats are going to get really sick, and they're going to have to reach out and find alternatives.
Yes.
And the easiest alternative is to look more natural, right? And from a perspective of books, from a perspective of going online, and it's the same with people. You go online now and you can find a million do-it-yourself ear infection things and whatever. More and more of that's going to happen because the vet industry is failing big time. They don't have enough vets. They simply don't have enough techs. They don't have enough vets. And as sad as that sounds, it is a perfect opportunity for people not to jump on the bandwagon like, oh yeah, it's a great opportunity for business. That's not what I'm saying. It's a good opportunity for education. It's a great opportunity to get as much. That's why nothing that I do costs anything, right? Like it's like I try to get, and it has nothing even to do with products. It's just empowering people to make a choice, because at the end of the day, they're still your dog. It's still your cat. And you know them better than any vet does that's going to see them for 15 minutes. And I have some of my best friends are vets. And I'm not negating that we need vets, but I'm feeling like, you know what? They're going to need the support because they're burning out and they aren't finding cures for chronic disease, and they're not able to help their patients. And they're going to come to a time where it's going to be like, I got to work with these people, not against these people. And big corporations are either going to, there's always going to be there's enough sick animals out there for conventional medicine to continue to thrive for people that will never, ever, ever do anything but conventional. And it's the same holds true with the natural side. There's enough sick dogs and sick cats and sick people to have everybody be able to thrive. But I think our biggest thing is that we have to collaborate and not try and squish each other out, right? And not try, and we have to step back. We don't have to do anything. For me, my dream would be that everybody would step back and do a couple of things. Look at what we're doing to our environment in our nature. Like I'm talking about anyone that's in the natural healthcare sector, people or animals, it doesn't matter. Step back and go, what can we give back to what we're taking? And then when your heart opens with that and you actually look at at how do we give back to nature, you automatically become more open to supporting each other in this higher vision, right? Which is, for me, wildlife, environment, and animals. There's not people figuring out people. I don't figure out people. Okay. But you know what I'm saying?
You used some very important words there, which was education, knowledge, empowerment, and giving people choice. Yeah. That's what it's all about, and also cooperation between us all.
Yeah.
And then it comes to soil, regenerative farming, and
regenerative forests, because
yes,
without trees and oxygen, regenerative oceans, right? Like we just came out with an oil that is a fermented seaweed that leaves the oceans alone, right? Like we can't, like I've been supporting regenerative farming for a very, very, very long time. But I'm also, it's like, okay, what can we do to support the oceans? What do we do to support the forests? Right? Yeah. It's like everything. How do we look at protecting this? So
very ancient friends, the forest. They're wonderful people, the forest trees.
Oh my God. It is so amazing.
Yeah. With their roots down into the soil, and they're talking to fungi and to each other.
It's phenomenal.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah. It's a community. And on that note, about where the veterinary profession is going, it's a good opportunity for us to remember that it's really important the type of vet you choose. That aligns with you. It's really important you have a really good relationship with your vet. You shake your vet's hand, you look them in the eye, you know them just as much as it is that you know your farmers these days, that you know your your ranchers, where you're getting your meat from, grass-fed, or organic or otherwise. These are the days where we're, I think in a lot of ways we've become so, tech forward and relied on tech. I think that one of the cool things I see happening is people are coming back to more ancestral methods and learning, the source of the seed, where things are coming from. And we talk a lot about, you eating and your dog eating, your cat eating, what that animal has eaten, and all of this is important. So, but it's an evolution. We'll all, we have to take our time. Julie, you've been on this march for a long time. I've been on this march for a long time. Ian's been on this march for a long time. If you're new to this conversation, just take it, be inspired by it, let it take some time to sink in, and align yourself with good people that are doing, right by the planet, right by your dogs, and right by you. So, Julie, thank you so much. This has been a great hour and a half.
It's been lovely to hear from you, Julie. Fantastic.
Yeah, it's really nice to see you too. I wish we all had more time just to sit and yak, because it does. It inspires everything. Like you're constantly learning, right? We learn from we learn from each other, and even the learning part is just the friendship, right? And what comes out of friendship, and what comes out of, you get excited, you get inspired, you get, your brain starts, thinking of all these different things.
Yep. That's why I think why podcasts were invented, so people could have an excuse to talk with their friends more, right?
I think so. Yes.
Yeah.
It works well.
Well, great. With that, everybody go over to Julie's site, and that again is adoredbeast.com, and you can look at the new wolf strain there and her other products. And thanks so much again, Julie. It's great to be with you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Indeed.
I really appreciate it. Thank you for all you're doing too. It's awesome.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for being on. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.